a better future. Surprise, I see it's all in your eyes. Open your eyes. It's a better future. As clear as the sky, I know when you're down. If you're down right, it'll be fine. Take it in hand, understand it's a go. You've always been there and prepared for a show. You're bright like a light, it's divine when you glow. You remind me to shine, don't you know? You're the better picture. Surprise, I see it's all in your eyes. Open your eyes. Such a better future. As clear as the sky, I know when you're down the line, it'll be fine.
Hi, my name is Allison Yuming Chu. My pronouns are she or they. I'm the connectivity producer of Company One Theater.
And hi, my name is Summer L. Williams. My pronouns are she or her. And I'm the co-founder and associate artistic director of Company One Theater. Welcome to the Better Future series.
For the past 23 years, Company One has been making theater at the intersection of art and social change, using theater as a pathway to social justice and civic engagement. The Better Future series is our digital gathering space that brings together Boston's artists, community leaders, and change makers.
Allison, I am so excited about tonight's episode, Liberating the Superheroes, which expands on the themes at the center of Company One's most recent production to explore a new vision for Black caregivers, community health, and justice.
Absolutely. And before we started, we would like to begin by acknowledging that Company One Theater produces work in Boston, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts people. We affirm that it is important to understand and honor the history of the Indigenous land that we occupy, while recognizing this acknowledgement is insufficient and does not undo the legacies of violence and displacement of Indigenous people. We continue to take steps toward a future of decolonization and reconciliation. Thank you.
Well, we are so excited tonight to bring to you my conversation, two of the core creators of Black Superhero Magic Mama, playwright Inda Craig Galvan, and director Monica White Ndunu, along with community activist Latoya Gale and human services leader Nikki Tenorman. We'll be discussing the play and its connections to the on-the-ground work happening in Boston as we explore our collective vision for what support and care for Black mothers should look like in our communities.
Black Superhero Magic Mama is a story about grief and police brutality, but at the same time, amplifying the power of Black mothers, specifically to rewrite their own stories and to wear their superhero capes however they choose to wear it. We thought we'd have some fun introducing our panelists today, so we asked each of them to tell us what the play is about in under 30 seconds. Let's hear their take on the story first, and then dive into the conversation.
Black Superhero Magic Mama by Inda Craig Galvan is a story of one mother's journey back to herself as she goes through a grieving process through an unimaginable loss.
Play for me is about the ways that this Black mother deals with her grief over the loss of her son. It's about the expectations that are put on her that are ridiculous.
Black Superhero Magic Mama is about police brutality and community violence, gun violence, and the impact that that has on a Black family.
Oh my gosh. I felt like the play went inside the head and the heart of Black mothers and the conversations that I have with other Black mothers about, and it just took our hopes and our fears and then just put them on this stage.
It really shows how encompassing grief can be, how complicated grief can be, and how things like discrimination, stereotypes against the Black community, against Black mothers, can make grieving all that more complicated.
It's about what we do in the society to people, to Black mothers.
It was an emotional experience for me, and it was a validating experience for
The
me.
play does a nice job through magical realism, showing how one woman's experience with grief, but also a lot of other learnings for mental health in the Black community, and how what Black families need in order to survive in a world where there still is, unfortunately, too much gun violence and police brutality.
Yeah, and not presented in a way where it felt like it had to be neat or was worried about someone else's feelings. It was just like real and raw in a way that really resonated with me.
And it's about, more than anything, loving ourselves and taking care of ourselves and each other.
I think this play is the play that everyone should see, regardless of who you are or where you come from, because it's really about all of us.
Inda, hi. Can you share with us where this play came from? What were some of the seeds?
I remember watching a press conference that after a shooting in, I think it was 2015, and a mom was leading everyone in prayer at this press conference after her son had been killed by a white cop, her Black son by a white cop. And I thought in that moment, oh, she's so brave. I couldn't do that. And my son was in his room. I think he was asleep at the time. And I thought that I would never be that brave, be able to do something like that. And then a second later, it hit me, that wouldn't mean that I'm not brave. That would mean that I'm grieving. And why are we expecting Black mothers to show up and fulfill this duty, fill this role? And I was so used to it at that point, and we had all become so used to it, and I was like, wait, that's not right. And it got me thinking, like, what would happen if a mother couldn't or wouldn't do what she's expected to do by the media and by society? And that was sort of the spark for the play.
Wow, thank you.
It's every week with this shit, Connie. Pardon my language.
Nah, don't worry about it. It's fucked up. How's the mother? Are you covering the rally on this one?
Don't I always? Thing is, though, we don't know where she is. Apparently, she's not handling it well.
That's new. How can you have a rally without the mother? Someone invited her, right? Like, not invited, but the mothers always go to the rally. Isn't that like some kind of protocol? You hearing this, Micah? The mom thing could be an interesting angle.
Thank you. I would love to hear each of you share a little bit about how this play and its themes really intersect or impact your work. Latoya, would you mind starting?
Sure. Just what Inda said. So I started March Like a Mother for Black Lives for that reason, that as Black mothers, we are for some reason expected to be superheroes. We're supposed to be expected to be strong, even in the most grief we could ever feel. We're expected to show up for everybody, to show up for a movement, to show up for so many things, and we're not allowed to just be weak and vulnerable and sad. at that time. And so I wanted to create a space where we could be all of those things, where we could be strong if we were strong in that moment, where we could be weak, where we could be joyful, and we could be there for each other. I feel like this play just ripped out like the heart of why I do what I do and put it on the stage. Because sometimes things are so painful. We're not going to have this conversation with you. So thank you, Enda, for writing these things down.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Monica.
Yes. I guess speaking as an artist and a mother whose art is driven by wanting to influence the world to be better than it is, which I thought it would have been better than it is by now. So I think every aspect of my work, whether it's as an artist, as an educator, as an author, everything that I do, I think is in alignment with trying to somehow make the world better than what it is. And so this particular play, it really moved me the first time that I read it, because I too have had those moments of witnessing those moms have to stand up in probably the most horrific experience that any mother could have, and to somehow be composed and to say all the right things and behave in all the right ways, because the way that she represents herself can also influence the ways in which her child will be seen, even having been a victim of this type of violence, knowing that they're going to be painted a certain way in the media. And so that mother, having to stand up in that moment and, represent herself and her child under these circumstances, I think it is a special type of cruelty to have that kind of expectation that I only see placed on Black women. I can't think of anybody else who's held to that standard to have to do that. And so what I particularly love about this play and what made me want to be a part of this particular opportunity to tell the story is that it shows the depth of this woman's humanity, and it shows the depth of her grief and her pain. And it also shows her being the hero of her own story, and finding ways to connect with the people around her in order to do that. And so I think it's a story. One of the things I often say when I talk about it to people is that there's healing built into the narrative. But the reality is, as a people who have experienced such, historical traumas, that sometimes we have to face those traumas through our storytelling in order for us to be able to move forward in our lives. And so how those stories get structured, the care and nuance that Enda is taking in telling a story is really quite remarkable. And I think it's going to be a really great example for, how to tackle this type of storytelling in future works.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. Thank you. Nikki.
Yes. I would love to build off of what all three of you have said. I took away very similar things from the play. As a clinical social worker, and I'm a private practice therapist working mostly with adults who identify as BIPOC or LGBTQ in the greater Boston area. A lot of what you all have said around the societal pressure placed on Black women, the stereotypes placed on Black women, and also Black families, because we see trauma in the play, the trauma of police brutality and community violence, but the ways that impacts an adolescent looks a little bit different than it does a mom. And you all have already touched on that the pressure for a Black mom, to be strong all of the time. And in this case, when faced with the most imaginable tragedy that's then replayed repeatedly in the news, not being able to control that narrative. And then as you were uplifting the power, no opportunities for her to be seen as vulnerable. The fact that we are so much more comfortable seeing a Black woman being strong. We are even more comfortable, and I think this was built into the storyline, we're so much more comfortable seeing a Black woman as a superhero, this strong narrative, than her being, crumpled on the floor, barely able to move. And you had uplifted that, LaToya, around the vulnerability, that we don't make space for Black women to be vulnerable, Black mothers to be vulnerable. And the societal narrative of that through the news media, through the stereotypes that are uplifted throughout the play. And then also, like you said, Monica, the power of storytelling, that it's therapeutic for the boys in the play. It's therapeutic for mom living through that story, both the therapeutic experience of living through the story that her son has created, and also then taking the mic. Like, that's one of the, I'm not saying lyrics, I'm sorry that I'm not a person, one of the lines in the play around, I have to step up to the mic. And that there is a power in being able to tell your story, tell your narrative, and then there's a therapeutic component of it. And then that being reflected at one point back to the audience in the play too. So all of it's so rich. And I really just personally appreciated you talking about what drove you to write it, because for me, those the newscaster dialogue was quite powerful, and that it resonated with me. So thank you for sharing that too.
Another victim of a police shooting, this time a 14-year-old boy from the South Side. Tom?
Thanks, Connie.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. Connie, such a tragedy. Another tragedy. Some are calling this a tragedy. His green and white leather jacket riddled with bullets.
With bullets.
Attending a taping.
Thanks, Nikki. Thank you so much. I want to stay on this thread of mental health and wellness for a hot second, because one of the things that moved me to no end upon first read of this play all the way through every time I've seen it is this the duality and the recognition of understanding that so Sabrina has lost her child and goes inward to try to make sense of all of it. And when we get to the second half and we're really in that comic book world and space, it's so beautiful and so vibrant. The reminders of what her actual present state are, it takes my breath away every time I think about it, every time I'm reminded. And it's important to feel that. I'm really interested, Nikki, for you to share a little bit, because in your work, you would be the person on that other side bearing witness to that experience and that trauma and how that is unfolding. So how do you do that work with people who might be actively experiencing that sort of trauma, and what sort of systems or supports or resources are available for folks who are in that sort of crisis need? And it's a crisis.
It is. And actually, that's where I think I want to make sure that that it's important to name that the play depicts grief. And beyond depicting grief, it's depicting traumatic grief. Because like we've said, Sabrina is experiencing the loss of her son, which any parent is going to grieve the loss of your child. And we know from we being the mental health field, know that normal grief can last up to a year. So I just want to say, so we expect people to be on the floor having a difficult time for a year. So you layer on for Sabrina, she's lost her son to gun violence, to police brutality. And then it's played on the news. And as we've said, there's no control over how it's depicted. And then she's also feeling like we've layered on historical trauma and also stereotypes that are influencing her ability to exhibit and process her grief in what I, as a therapist, would say is a healthy way. Because she is feeling that, oh, you have to come here and take a sound bite. We need you on the mic. I want to end the pressure that she was feeling, which might be more normal representations of grief of people wanting to reach out to her. But also there was the layer of the coach Brackett trying to explain his piece of it, and Flat Joe trying to explain his piece. And that was also traumatic for her. So I just think it's important that we name that she's experiencing traumatic grief, and to the point that it becomes what we would call as complicated grief. We would not, she does fall into psychosis. She is not with herself. We assume she's hospitalized, or she is being attended to by medical treatment. So there's an implied too of an access to mental health care that I think we could even think about, right? In terms of what is the access to the Black community to affirming mental health care. We see she has a strong support network in the aunt, which I think was wonderful to see. And you see that throughout that. And I think it implies how important that is to her recovery, like that she has somebody checking in, affirming that she will be okay. And that no matter how long it takes, that they're going to be there. When we think about the Black community, I think there's a lot of barriers against our health and wellness. So when we think about resources, it's access to mental health care. It's a supportive mental health care that's culturally affirming, right? We can talk about, if there's interest, what is it like to go to a therapist who tells you, oh no, there's no stereotypes. What police brutality? It was just an accident. Somebody could say that, and that's going to make your grieving even more complicated. So access to mental health care that's affirming, a support network, time. I think there was a lot of pressure on Sabrina to turn around, but all of those are part of being able to grieve. And then again, trauma, and Monica had named historical trauma too, that part of this is she's at risk for being re-traumatized in the future, and for almost a PTSD type experience. So I'm happy to, I don't want to keep, because obviously I was very clued into the mental health pieces of this, and there's a lot of different aspects of mental health and also mental wellness for the Black community that I think is depicted in the play.
You just said something that jarred me so much. I never even thought about a scenario or setting where someone could be dissuaded of their experience under the guise of a therapeutic setting, especially a racialized dynamic. I'm sure that's foolish to think about, but man, that is, I can't even imagine what the layers of trauma are that exist in that realm. Gosh, I'm curious about what does that social justice lens, how does that show up? And how do you continue to center it in the difficulty of the artistic world that you're sort of in and navigating? Not everyone is down for things that are about uplifting communities. And so how do you navigate some of those things in your particular fields?
Yeah, I always write stories, things that I create are centered on Black women. And you have to be forthright and steadfast in that when you're coming into the work, when you're collaborating with people. There's often pressure to explain things for an audience, and I have to constantly advocate for the way that I write, to say this isn't written for white people. If white people want to come on board and watch it, and absolutely enjoy it, but I'm not writing it to explain what it's like to be Black, or what happens in our households, or what happens in our conversations. You're getting a slice, and that's what you're getting. I'm not going to tell you what the ingredients are. I'm not going to explain how to make it. But I seek to write stories about Black women, and most of the time, women who have some sort of mental health crisis in that moment, the moment that we're meeting the character. So they see the world differently. They see, and the audience gets to see what the world looks like from that character's point of view. And I always want to represent Black folks in a way that shows that we're not a monolith, that every character is specific and different and unique. And I don't know if I would call it social justice, but it's important to me in my art to say this is who we are, this is who we can be, and I'm not gonna compromise how I depict our experiences.
Thank you. And thank you, because without that, we wouldn't be here. So thank you.
Have you eaten? You hungry? I got you some groceries. I got you butter pecan. Shoot, I left all that outside. Let me. Bree. Mr. Davis called me from Gatlin's funeral home. I've been talking to him, telling him what I can, but I can't make any final decisions on arrangements. You have to do that. Do you think you can go over there with me? He said he'll be there till 8 o'clock tonight. He's waiting for you.
So people like Inda who write stuff like this make it easy for me to show up in spaces as my whole self, right? You know, I work a lot in the nonprofit space, and it is very white. But most of the time the work it's centered on people of color, right? It's centered on, you know, the people who are marginalized, that are not like hetero white males or women in a space. And so, you know, I always have to like bring to my work, like if you say this work is about certain groups of people, then where are those people in the work? And why aren't those people leading this work and having like hard conversations with people? They're hard for other people more than for me to have them, right? It's hard for people to bring some reality and, you know, to people, like how like why do you only give money to organizations who are led by people who don't look like the people that they're supposed to be serving, right? And so, you know, I love art, because art is a great way for me to point to people. Sometimes it's an easier pill for them to swallow, for me to point to a piece like this and say, you know, you should check this play out. This is what I'm trying to say to you. Or, you know, but I think social justice is like a thread through everything that I do. But sometimes it's I feel like I'm not like that Black superhero, or that I'm expected to be in white spaces, right? You know, like I'll have conversations with my friends of color, and I'm like, oh. Like sometimes you're in these spaces and people, if you're the only person who's not white, they look at you. Yeah, like, you must have all the answers, right? And they're like, we're a monolith. You must have all the answers because these are your people. Are we saying this right? Are we doing this right? And the answer is, you need to have more of these people here. You can't look at me to explain everyone who looks like me, or everyone who holds some identities that I may hold or not. And that's who should be leading this work, not you. I always find it interesting that people who are not impacted by something have the audacity to say, I'm going to go and fix this for other people. And a lot of the work I do is saying, won't you just step back and let them do it? Nobody needs you to come in and be their superhero, right? So it's interesting that they think that we're super strong and we can do anything at the same time, but we can't help ourselves, right?
Thank you, Monica, and then Nikki.
Yeah, I think I don't know how not to do it. because I think it's so ingrained in who I am and how I approach my life and my work generally. So in addition to the artistic work, and number one, I'm very selective about what I will direct because I really care about what energy and narrative about us is put out into the world. So first and foremost, I won't do just anything. I do believe that it's important that there is a diversity of perspective representing Black people and Black cultures. And so I'm not saying this work shouldn't be made or done, or, I mean, some things probably shouldn't be, but that's a whole other show. But I'm respectful of the artist and the need to represent a range of perspectives. But at the same time, I'm just very particular about the stories that I'm contributing to telling. My barometer often has been, because I'm also an actor, was also a director and also an educator. But even as an actor, I remember when I selected roles, I would never do a role that I couldn't do in front of my great-grandmother or my mother or my child, which was primarily because I didn't want to have to explain anything. Like I wanted to be able to be very clear about what I'm doing, that it really reflected what I wanted to put into the world. So I've taken that same sort of mentality as a director as well. Doesn't always work out, as you pointed out, Summer, because sometimes we are working in spaces that are not necessarily welcome to that perspective. But I do it anyway. And it seems that, like I may be blacklisted in some spaces because of it. But I'm good with that because, again, I know who I answer to at the end of the day and at the end of this journey. And that's cool with me. So very often I do the work and then I write about it. I publish about it. And sometimes I do it because I know a lot of people aren't in a position to do it. Like I teach also, like I'm a tenured professor and, I do whatever. And so I have a certain flexibility to be able to say and do certain things that other folks can't. And so I utilize that to the best of my ability. And it makes it's really hard. It's not like it's easy on me because in academia, they're not trying to hear it either. But, I try to do what I can, when I can, wherever I can. And I look for other folks who are doing the same thing because we are stronger together. If we are doing this work together, then I think it's less likely that a single person can be harmed, by speaking up. And so that's one of the ways I try to do it.
Thank you, Monica. And Nikki.
Yeah, so I started my private practice 4 years ago, really because I wanted to be able to provide individual therapy that was responsive to my clients' racial and cultural backgrounds. That was because as somebody who's seen a therapist before and recognized the value of that in the greater Boston area, knowing that it's not a very diverse place. And so we don't have as many of those therapists available. And then knowing that on the whole, the mental health field has it's a traditionally white field as a practitioner, it's traditionally white female practitioner field. And so wanting to, as a biracial woman, I identify as biracial, wanting to be able to provide therapy that is allows my clients to show up however they are with their mental health conditions and not have it be one where I'm providing racist therapy. Because unfortunately, I think that sometimes that absolutely is happening where there's bias or prejudice that's influencing the clinical interactions. And so I really think deeply about being able to affirm historical trauma, affirm the experience of racism when holding with clients, when issues of police brutality are in the news and the trauma that they experience through that. And then on a larger scale, aside from the individual work that I do, I really think deeply about trying to move the health system and the mental health field toward toward a liberatory system, because we all know, and we could spend, somebody said we have a whole nother call about the history of racism in medicine and why Black people have the worst outcomes, health outcomes out of any other group in the United States. Like this is, it's by design, right? I see you all nine. So that is what I do on a larger scale, is really trying to get us there. And it's one step at a time, because yes, the health system would much rather make a lot of money off of Black people than it would making us feel healthy so that we don't need it, don't need to obtain the medical care. So we have a lot further to go in that regard.
Thank you. That's hard to hear and true. And we know that there are good people like you out in the world and out in the field doing the work. So no one should be dissuaded. I think there are more and more folks who are available now, because you're making choices to come back and be here and work here. So that's really dope. So I'd like to ask LaToya for a second, and I'd love for you to share about your work and how helping people to advocate for themselves and the needs of their families and communities, especially Black moms. And I'm curious about how that advocacy training happens for Black moms and caregivers. And I'm also interested in this idea of your founding of March Like a Mother for Black Lives, and how those things sort of intersect in terms of creating a village of activist moms.
Absolutely. Literally, me and my friend Sarah had a conversation. We are both the mothers of Black boys, and it was right after George Floyd was murdered, and we said to each other, we want to do something. And we said, we want to have a space that centers Black women and that encompasses all of who we are. We wanted to have a space that encompassed our pain and our grief and our power and our joy too. And even though we called it March Like a Mother, we purposely included just Black women, because Black women, you have your other mothers, your aunties, your mama's friends, your whoever, these women who are your village, right? And what Monica said, there's this book, I forget the author's name now. Forgive me, we can plug it in after maybe. Yeah. But there's this book that We Live for the We, it's called. And it talks about the political power of Black motherhood. That's the subtitle of the book. But we do live for the we. And so we have like these villages of people, and we do support each other. We know, I know, as a Black woman, if somebody's grieving, your girls show up. That's what you do. When somebody's celebrating, your girls show up. And so I think we naturally have a way of that we are in community with each other that was easy to build on.
Thank you. So I have one or two more questions. And Nikki, I'm going to ask that we start with you, and then you can sort of kick it around to whomever. But you all have children, and I'm really curious about how your particular advocacy work, or the lens of advocacy work, how it impacts the way you approach parenting. And then also, what's the flip side of that? What does it mean to be a Black mom in both all sorts of professional spaces, and what's the impact on you?
Yeah, that's a great question that I feel like changes with over time. I think it's been interesting at this current point in my parenting journey and my womanhood journey, what my experience is like as a Black mixed race mom raising a multiracial child. Yeah, what it's like and how it feels different in different places when she's at different ages. The protection and we saw that need to protect your child come out in the play, that fear that we've said. And I think I feel that in different ways at different ages. When it was younger, it was, I want you to have that positive racial identity. I want you to feel strong and confident as a little brown girl. And as it's older, you know, we've been talking about just the stereotypes that are placed on Black people. And I feel that the need to protect against those. Don't say that at school, because they're going to come back and they're going to assume things about you. You can't wear those pants to school. They're going to think I can't afford pants that don't have holes in them. But versus it just being, you know, that's the pair you want to wear. So, you know, as a therapist, I think I am very conscious of the way that racism, bias, prejudice, oppression impact our psyches in the US. As a mom, I feel that. Like, think about the pressure we all put on ourselves as moms too, as Black moms, as professionals. We're all professionals, right? Like, whatever, you know, we want to lean into that, but that's, you know, it is a lot to manage. And I think I know this is, I don't want to break that fourth wall, but this is a weeknight where we all are shuffling between dinner and drop off and our own emails and sleep. And I think sometimes that's a pressure too that we carry, like that pressure we saw too in the play of like, damn it, I should have just driven it. Why didn't I just drive him? And why wasn't I just the crap mom? And you would have yelled at me that whole ride, and I don't freaking care because I know what I'm doing. You know, I feel that too, of like, you just try and do your best, and that's all you can do. And I think we've uplifted that you show up every day. I try and remind myself of my ideals and why do I do what I do? And that's, you know, you hope you get it right. And I appreciated in the play too, that there was opportunities. We did center, Inda, you said, centering on their relationship between Tamarian and Sabrina. And you see that at the end, right? It starts it and you see it at the end too. And that it's not a full repair. Like, she's always going to have that grief, but just being able to like see your child and be like, okay, you know, this is, I feel like that's a real moment too. So that's what
Mom?
I should have gone to the pizzeria.
Don't do that.
I should have sat at another table. I could have sat at the bar and gotten to know Coach Brackett just a little better, and then me and you and me and you, we could have gotten in my car and we'd be home right now. You'd be here. You left me.
Mom, look at me. Look at me, Mom.
I'm afraid to.
I'm very glad that both of my children are grown now. Not children. My son and daughter are grown now and living on their own, but I'm also always terrified because they're not under my roof or in my womb, where they would be safest. I think. I just remember times where I've had to show up at school and say, I remember my son, when we moved to California, he would always be the last one to come out of the classroom. And I was like, why are you, I had talked to his teacher, and I'm like, what is going on? And she said, oh, he's the class cleaner. Like, he helps me clean up the room at the end of the day. And he was also the only Black child in the class. And he was happy to help. But I was like, you know, you're gonna have to find somebody else. You need to rotate this responsibility in your classroom. And I know they all thought I was the meanest person at that school when all the moms were showing up with their Starbucks and their pulling up in their Mercedes SUVs every morning. And I was in my pick and waiting 20 minutes for the class cleaner to come out. I have always felt like I had to be present at their schools, show my face, make sure they understood that you can't treat them differently. And in my work, even when I was in grad school, at the same time my daughter was in undergrad, having to figure out a way to balance what I'm trying to do as a career and still trying to get my son through high school and trying to get, help with her college. And she went to a very mostly white college that was having incidents every year where we would get a letter from the president of the university apologizing for some blackface incident or some freedom of speech wall, where the Young Republican organization on campus would throw a party and do something horrific. So all of it ends up working its way into things that I write, but I'm also kind of torn between sitting down on my computer and writing a fake story, knowing what's happening with them and wanting to fix all of it and not feeling empowered enough to fix all of it, and knowing they got to make their own choices. My son chose to stay in a really small town in Illinois after he graduated college. And I was like, yeah, sure. Really? And it's, I carry fear with me all the time. I carry hope with me all the time, and try to not go crazy between the two. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And that's also a real point of vulnerability. So thank you. LaToya?
I think the way mom shows up for me, being a mom shows up for me at work, is I always find myself working in things that have to do with families and parents, right? And so I think I'm always sensitive to what other mothers are going through. And I try to be realistic with the spaces I create and what I ask of people, recognizing what they're dealing with. I always something that I've often said to people is like, the people that we work with are my people, are people who live in my community, who I live in the same community with. You're not going to run into them at the grocery store, but I will. So it's always going to matter more to me what they think of me than what you or this place thinks of me, because I'm in community with them when you're not, and I'm going to continue to be. And so I think that is how that shows up at work for me. And in mothering, I try to find that balance that Enda talked about, being realistic of the dangers of being Black in America, but wanting my children to experience the joy of being a child.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard, especially as they grow. When we were founding March Like a Mother, a conversation that we had was a friend of one of the co-founders, Sarah, had said that she cried when her son started to walk. And this is something that should be like joyous, but like Enda said, like those natural things that as a mom you should be excited about, like, yeah, I don't gotta like take care of you financially all the time. You're out my house, you're not making a mess. There's those things that we should be happy about, and we are, but there's also a fear that comes with, and I also can no longer protect you. And for that mom, her child learning how to walk was like the first step of, you're getting further away from the point that I can protect you. You're further away from the point that people see you as a baby and see you as a danger. And so, as a mom, I try to find that balance for my children to feel affirmed and loved, and try to find spaces that do that. Because I hope that I'm helping, and that all the work that you guys are doing are helping to create a world where maybe by the time they're my age, you don't have to feel that burden. That they can just be people, they can just be humans and don't have an extra burden. that comes with that. So I guess that's how I approach my mothering and my work.
Thank you. Gosh. Monica?
I think I can answer now without
Okay.
weeping. I don't know, something about that question, it just really struck a nerve with me today. I don't know if it's today, this week, like whatever it is, but I think I work too much, trying in so many different spaces, trying to make things better. Sometimes I feel really incredibly frustrated that the world wasn't better before I brought them into it. Because I feel like there's been so much effort in previous generations to do that for us. And our children will still inherit the weight of the weight, right? And so I think I work a lot in so many different spaces trying to, clear a path, not just for my own children, but like all of our children. But especially inspired by my own kids. My kids are interested in the arts, and even knowing the inequities that exist within the industry as it is. And I'm like in here throwing bows, just like doing whatever I can from where I stand to again, to try to make it better. I do advocacy work in the school district where my kids go to school. I do it on my campus, within my department, and, just trying to clear some space for us to be, and I think where I am on my journey right now is I'm learning to show my children how to rest. Because they've seen me working so hard trying to clear this space. And so I know they know that I've done everything I can possibly do. But they've actually even said to me, Mom, you work so hard. Like, could you, we want to see you rest. And so I'm actually making a point of trying to do more of that, and doing more of the things that I love and enjoy, so that I can model that for them as well. Because I don't want them to feel like every leg of their journey has to be about working and doing battle. I took it upon myself to do that because I honor and respect the folks who did that for me. I inhabit a lot of spaces where I am not supposed, they were not made for me. And I know somebody did the work to make sure that I could be there. And so I take it personal that I have to do the same thing. But I also know I will not allow this work to kill me, because I know it has taken so many of us just in our knowing there's a need to have to do it. And so I think part of my process now, what I've built into my process, is self-care and rest, and finding spaces of joy, and pursuing things that I want to do just because I want to do it, and making sure my children see me doing that as well.
Thank you. That's actually a perfect segue to our final question of the evening, which is, this is a part of our, as you know, Better Future series, where we have been deeply engaged for almost 3 years now in conversations about what does a better future for our community look like. And in a host of different ways, we've been approaching that question. And so for you all, we'd love to hear you just sort of popcorn a little bit. What does a better future look like for our community?
when you said that, what popped into my mind immediately is the Black Joy Wall from the play, where and yeah, so initially we were I know the projectionist was like pulling these images of Black people. Well, I don't know if I should explain the scene for people, but
yeah.
So there's a moment in which Sabrina, as the Messiah angel, has been sort of tricked into having to listen to, these news reports of things that actual Fox News reporters have said about Black people who have been victims of police violence and white vigilante violence. And once she's trapped in this moment of having to listen to all that, but then she realizes, based on something one of the villains says, that she actually has more control and more power than she thought she did initially. And so she says, I have to see things through a new lens, And so you hear that repeatedly, a new lens, perspective, like all of this you hear throughout the play. So in that moment, initially the projectionist had these images of, famous Black people doing things. And we decided to flip it, and we asked the members of the cast to share their own images of Black joy, of, just pictures from your own life. So that moment in the play, when those images show up and it really combats all the negativity that has trapped her before, to me, that's what the better future looks like. It's for us to be able to see ourselves through a new lens and to be able to project what we see, like the beauty and power of who we are, through every avenue possible, where we are, when we have creative control of our own stories, when we're dictating what shows up on the screen as it represents us, when we're able to be our full selves in every space, where we're not asking permission to do that, but we just do it because that price has already been paid. That's one of the things my grandfather always told me. He was like, don't let nobody tell you anything about you being an American or whatever. I fought for this country. I paved the way for you to have, whatever pride you want to have, and whatever. You don't need permission for any of that. And he's not the only one. So for me, the better future is for not only for us to know and recognize that as Black people, but for the world to know that we are not here by accident. And a lot of what we have now in the world that's of any value is because we did it. We built it, or we contributed to the building of that. And that's what I want to see more of in the future, us really walking in our power and in our purpose.
Yes, I agree with you. We need liberation in the future, the joy that you're talking about. Dare I even say, and I'll say it, we need reparations. We need resources, access, things that we've been historically marginalized from, intentionally so. That's what the future needs for our community. Representation, like you said, Monica, those are what come to mind for me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys said, you guys said it better than, I'm just going to probably repeat what you guys are saying, but the future looks liberated, where I am just free. I'm free. We're all free. We got free. That's what the future looks like, where I don't walk into a space and I'm already thinking about what someone's going to think about me. I'm not walking into a space wondering how big can my hair be this day or not? Like, who's going to be there and what does this represent? The future looks like where that something I'm not thinking about is, well, is my child going to be the only one who looks like him in a space? Or I'm not worried about that. The future is going to look like it's going to feel light. Monica talked about the weight of the weight. The future will feel light and easy and breezy and happy. That's a better future for me.
Yeah, I think that feeling of belonging, like you're saying, Latoya, of like just walking in space, that confidence that the welcoming by each other and the recognition when you see another Black person. Sometimes you get that and then sometimes you don't. So I think, like, I think in our better future, we all get the head nod. We all feel like we understand intrinsically our own individual value because it's been reinforced by other people who look like us and has been supported, and financial support and financial support of the community. People giving back and uplifting and promoting each other, and not getting shot. That would help. And it's so frustrating. I know everybody's been super positive, but I'm on Twitter all the time, and I need to just stop the way people talk about us. Or about critical race theory, or like, it's just so much fear. And like, I think a better future is people letting go of the nonsense and the rhetoric and viewing each other, particularly viewing us, as human beings who belong here and who have value, and us walking in that value and that sense of self regardless, because you can't make them do nothing. You can't even make them wear a mask.
I'll tell you, the future looks like there really is a Black Twitter. I always tell people, Black Twitter can't be on regular Twitter. We need our own,
a real
thing, right?
Our own thing. Absolutely. Ladies, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to be in this conversation with all of you.
Thank you all so much for joining us for Liberating the Superheroes, a new vision for Black moms, community health, and justice. And a huge thank you to Latoya, Nikki, Inda, and Monica for sharing their vision and wisdom with us today.
Please visit us at company1.org/Better Future Series for more information, resources, and action steps that you can take to continue supporting health and justice for Black families in Boston and beyond.
If you enjoy this program, please consider making a donation to Company One in order to support future events. To donate, you can visit company1.org/donate or Venmo us at company1-theater. That donation link and our Venmo username are also in the description and chat for this video.
And lastly, of course, we want to hear what you thought, what you experienced. So there is a link to a survey in the chat. Please take a moment and drop us a word. It really matters to us.
Thank you so much again for joining us and for helping us create a better future.